Welcome back to another 5-minute history as part of TANKMAS. I hope you all enjoyed this month, and this was another patron-chosen topic. Before we get started though, South African military equipment is still very new to me, but I have been force-fed it by my friend Hob Ambles, who you should completely check out because he covers this stuff far better than I ever will, and he will one day do a video on this tank that is far more in-depth than this one that's going to follow. So sub to him, have a look at his video on the Ratel, the Roy Cat, which is a personal favourite of mine, and the Eland. So give it a look, it'll be well worth your time. But that said, these tanks are quite interesting, and worth having a look at today, and plus a patron requested this, so here we go. The Oliphant tank was a main battle tank developed and used by the South African National Defence Force, and today in service with modern South Africa. Its name Oliphant, meaning elephant in Afrikaans, and it was developed during the apartheid era with help from Israel. The Oliphant has a unique history given that at its base it is an evolution from the British Centurion tank adapted through local innovation to meet specific demands of South Africa conditions and military strategy. The Oliphant story began in the late 1960s and early 70s, when South Africa's existing tank fleet, primarily consisting of British Centurion Mark IIIs, was becoming increasingly outdated. The Centurion was a great tank, but advances in technology, particularly mobility and firepower, rendered it less competitive against newer designs like the Soviet T-55 and T-62 that somehow kept miraculously appearing on South Africa's borders. Due to international sanctions imposed on South Africa during the apartheid era, the country could not simply import modern tanks or spare parts easily, and this forced South Africa to rely on domestic production along with support from Israel, who had modernised its Centurions and also maybe helped with something else, but that's not the topic for today, and local modification to fill the gap. Thus, the Centurion platform became the foundation of a local upgrade program that eventually produced the Oliphant Mark I, officially entering service in the 1970s. The aim was to enhance the Centurion's mobility, firepower, and protection while maintaining its proven reliability. The program was overseen by Armscor, Armaments Corporation of South Africa, which collaborated with local defence industries to replace or improve most of the Centurion's systems. The Oliphant Mark 1A featured significant mechanical improvements, including a new diesel engine that replaced the Centurion's old petrol engine, giving the tank better range and reduced fire risk. The suspension system was strengthened to manage the heavier weight of the armour upgrade, and its main armour was a 105mm Royal Ordnance L7 rifled gun, giving it the chance to stand up against newer Soviet tanks that the USSR was starting to provide African nations in order to curry favour. Later versions, such as the Oliphant Mark 1B and Mark II, continued to refine the tank's performance. The Mark 1B introduced a new transmission, a computerized fire control system, night vision capabilities, and a laser rangefinder. Armour protection was increased, and new smoke grenade launchers and ERA was actually attached for better survivability on the battlefield. The Oliphant Mark II, introduced in the 2000s, further improved on these features, offering more modernised electronics, an upgraded power pack, and advanced targeting systems that allow the tank to operate effectively in both day and night conditions. The Oliphant saw action during the South African border war from 66 to 89, particularly in Angola where it faced Soviet-designed tanks fielded by Cuban and Angolan forces, and in these conflicts the Oliphant proved highly effective. But a lot of this wasn't down to the hard product, which in itself was still an old Centurion that had been dressed up. Instead, it was largely due to superior crew training, tactical doctrine, and adaptability in harsh African environments, despite being based on an older design. The introduction of the Roy Cat and the fall of the apartheid government brought about a swan song for this tank though. Although there were some upgrades made to it, there was only so much that could be built on the Centurion's hull. The tank still survives today, albeit in smaller numbers and in a far worse state, but it is nonetheless an interesting tank. The reality is that modern South Africa simply can't afford to operate large tank fleets with, the current economic problems plaguing the country. And, not being at war constantly with their border in Angola and with rebels in Namibia does tend to lead to the fact that the South Africans, they don't need a large tank fleet, and any kind of armour that they could or need to use, the Roy Cat fills that role very, very well in a way that the much heavier and much more expensive to run Oliphant can't. The thing about the Oliphant that makes it very cool though is that it's an apartheid product built upon an old imperial hull that has since been refined and used a bit better by the modern state. It truly is the history of South Africa in a single nutshell and on a single vehicle's hull. Remember to check out Hob Ambles for more very niche South African military equipment. Like I said, he covers it so much better than I could. It's his passion, that's why. And when someone's got a passion, you can very clearly tell in their videos and what they make. Thank you patrons for the topics for the short videos this month. Merry TANKMAS, and I will catch you all next time.